What's up, ladies? Welcome back to Music and Beauty TV. It's me, Miss Ruby. Thank you so much for subscribing, for sharing this video, and for joining the dialogue. I know that these videos can be kind of misleading right now because it seems like I'm feeling myself and I'm feeling my hair, which I kind of was, but as you can see in the title, I'm totally aware that this was somewhat of a fail. I decided to film this video because there are a lot of closure videos circulating the internet, frontal videos that make it look easier than it actually is. But honestly, it can be very frustrating trying to do this on yourself and trying to do it for the very first time. Myself, I am a hairstylist and I've done frontals on other people before, and I've never failed this bad at it, honestly. I really wanted to throw this video in the trash, but I decided maybe there's someone who can benefit off of the lessons I learned, which is why it's up. And yeah, we're gonna just jump right into it so I can go over the details of how I failed so miserably and how I tried to make the best of it. So, getting started, I have been provided hair by Wiggins Hair. This is the frontal. It is a full lace frontal. It is not pre-customized. We have 3 bundles of hair. They didn't mention the type, but these are 12, 14, and 16-inch bundles, and the frontal was a 10-inch. First step of this process is obviously bleaching the knots for the frontal. So I have my foil, I have my bleach, and my 40 volume developer, which usually I would like to use 30 volume developer, but I don't know why I decided to use 40 this time. Let's move on to more fails. So yes, I'm going to use 2 scoops of this bleach, and then I'm pretty much just going to pour as much developer in there and mix it in as I think necessary. If you haven't seen other videos like this, then we always go with keeping the consistency really pasty like, not too runny, because you don't want it to seep through and bleach the actual hairs. You just want it to bleach the knots. So this is me mixing the bleach together, trying to find the consistency. It was still a little bit too thick right here, so I added a little bit more developer. And this was more of a success moment for me. I bleach knots for closures and frontals all the time, and it's usually not like a huge mess up. Every once in a while, you will get a few hairs in there, but it's a very easy cleanup process, so I wouldn't concern myself too much about it. So I decided to do something new. This video is going to show you a few things that are new, things that I don't always do. My first time bleaching the knots to a frontal on the doll head. Usually I lay it out. So I'm starting out by brushing back the baby hairs with a wet brush just to get those baby hairs out of the way. And then I'm going to go ahead and lay this frontal on top of the foil that I just molded over the foam doll head. And I'm going to stick it down to the foam doll head with some pins and just try to anchor it and stretch it out as much as I can so that when I go in to apply the bleach, then it'll be easy to spread. And as I'm applying this bleach, then I am using light-handed strokes, definitely not pressing it down, trying to get a generous amount on the brush so that I can simply spread it lightly without it seeping too far into the hair, because I only want to bleach the knots. Say what up to my baby, y'all. She all in the camera. I ended up realizing that getting this motion together, like getting like a whole bunch on the brush and then keeping the brush kind of flat, like not even angling it up too much, just as flat as possible with a lot on it, and then spreading it with just one even stroke is a very easy and consistent way to get the bleach on there without feeling like you're pressing it in. So I felt like this was a success moment. Moving on, once I got that majority of that frontal covered with the bleach, then I went ahead and flipped it over and very lightly laid it down onto the foil, trying not to add any pressure because I don't want that bleach to seep through. Now, as you'll see, there are a couple spots where the bleach did get on the hair, and so I'm going to go in with a wet paper towel and just try to clean that up as much as I can. I'm not worried too much about it because these hairs are in the front, and a lot of the front hairs are going to be plucked out anyway, so I'd rather concern myself with that later on if I need to go in with some mascara or something to darken it. But for the most part, if you copy what I just did, then you will have success. This is what the frontal looked like about 10 minutes into the bleaching process. I really am not a big fan of bleaching my frontals and closures if I can avoid it, because processing the hair just makes it easier to shed, and these things tend to shed rather easily compared to bundles. So this is what it looked like about 20 minutes into the processing, and because I don't like to keep the bleach on any longer than that, I just went ahead and rinsed it out at this point. I used the Iso Plus shampoo to pretty much stop the processing of the bleach. Then I went in with the purple shampoo, which I've transferred into a jar, but it's the same purple shampoo, Shimmer Lights, that everyone uses. And I put that on the frontal and I let that sit for at least 10 minutes. Then I washed that out, and then I conditioned it with the Pantene Pro V. And this is what it ended up looking like. As you can see, there are still some black hairs in there, but like I said, I felt like a lot of these are going to get plucked out, so I'm not concerned about it. And ultimately, the lace was tinted because it was more of like a grayish brown, and now it's more of like just a more brown. And when I put the frontal on my head, this is what it looked like. Now, this really didn't look that bad to me. I was like, you know what? This is actually going to be a successful moment for me. I don't have to do too much to this frontal. We're all good. Let's go. So I proceeded to pluck. Now, generally when I pluck the hairlines for lace frontals, I just kind of go in and just take random pieces of hair, trying not to take too much out at one time so not to cause any balding. I know I'm moving very fast, but that's just because the video is sped up. As you can see, it's a really long video. But I just try to take out, little bits and pieces at a time, pretty much forming like these little miniature gaps. Because I noticed that when you observe the hairline of any person, we don't just have like consistent thickness all across our hairline. Most people have a little bit more sparse hairs in the beginning, and then it gets thicker and fuller as we go back. So I'm pretty much trying to mimic that by just plucking away, and this is the first part of the process. Now, I generally like to tell myself, like, pluck for at least 30 minutes. That's how you know you got a good amount out, because you think that you're doing good, and then 10, 15 minutes into the process, you realize you ain't done nothing. So that's what I did. I plucked for like probably longer than 30 minutes. Once I was finished, I looked at it and I was really proud of it. By the way, just as a side note, this video is very bright. I use studio lighting for this, and that's probably something different than a lot of frontal videos that you guys see, because most times the girls may have a ring light, but they're not like in front of a white background with a whole bunch of lights all over them, and so it looks a little bit more like natural lighting. And I've noticed that when you apply frontals and closures in very natural, somewhat yellow light, then you don't see nearly as many of the flaws as you see in bright light like this. So this light is definitely going to expose you guys to everything. I'll show you guys more of that at the end of the video. Moving on, the first part of the process is obviously attaching the frontal. This is my very first time ever sewing down my own frontal. My idea for this was that I was going to stitch the entire thing down and not use any glue, not use any got-to-be gel, no adhesive, no band, nothing. I've done that before on my clients and it's worked out great. But for me, not so well. So this is me measuring out the frontal. This is just me pretty much determining ear to ear about what my length is, and I'm going to put some clips in there so that I can have accuracy when I go to stitch and cut. So then I pretty much just like pinned down one side and then proceeded to stitch on the other side. Now, the reason why this is so difficult is because usually I will have my clients hold down both sides really, really tight while I stitch and move the frontal around as needed. So me trying to do it on my own was like close to a nightmare. It was so scary, and I feel like I did an okay job, but definitely it's much better when you do it on someone else. So generally though, when I do frontals, this is the process like I follow. I'll have my client hold down both sides real tight. I'll go in and I'll make my stitches on the side first. So starting out, that's pretty much what I'm doing, just anchoring this side down first. Then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna anchor the other side down. And I'm just gonna make sure that from ear to ear, my frontal is laying the way that I want it to lay. This is an example of somewhat of a success moment for me. It really wasn't that bad. It's gonna get worse. So yeah, after feeling like I got my stitches down on the sides pretty well, I decided let me go and cut the excess net off that's hanging above my ears. And that's what I did. And then I decided, hey, I may as well go ahead and cut the net off the front of my head, which I kind of regret. I kind of wish that I would have played around with it a little bit more before cutting it, but that was I would say that was mistake number one. After cutting it, I realized, yo, there are a lot of like black dots still in this front section that are going to show. So let me go ahead and thin this out a little bit more. That was mistake number two. What I should have done is just folded it back, put a grip of makeup on it, hairspray, let it set in, and not taking any hair out, because taking the hair out made such a great difference in the end result. And you guys will see what I'm talking about later. But at this point, I was just kind of frustrated. I just didn't feel like the frontal was going to be satisfactory. I felt like every time I stretched it across my head, you can clearly tell that it was net. Mind you, I'm doing this on myself in a very highly lit room, like I said. If I was doing this in the bathroom or something, I probably wouldn't have noticed as many flaws, and that may have been a good thing. So anyway, I just proceeded to mess with it, moving it back and forth. I haven't stitched the back of this frontal just yet, so I can still like make adjustments. And I kind of looked at that and I was like, okay, that seems like a good place to set it, because I felt like I could see less of the net since it was kind of blending in with my hair. But that was a mistake. As you guys probably know from watching other frontal videos, they always tell you lay your frontal like a little bit in front of your hairline and then just manipulate the baby hairs to make it look like your hairline. Well, I was just so distraught by the fact that it seemed like it was so far in front of my natural hairline that I felt like it needed to be right on my hairline and that I could make it work. And so that's what I tried to do. So anyway, I just proceeded to adding stitches, because these are like the final stitches that are going to really keep this thing in place, you know? Then I went to the back and I added the stitches in the back. And at this point, it still wasn't as bad as it's going to get. This I still could have worked with had my perspective been a little bit better. Had I been just a little bit more patient with myself and just had better vision for this whole frontal experience. I feel like when I do frontals on other people, it's just easier for me to see what I'm looking for. And with doing it on myself, I was just so critical. It's just, it's kind of annoying just to even edit this video. So at this point in the process, I'm realizing I'm still not satisfied. And I noticed that some of my natural baby hairs are poking out. And I figure, hey, why not just pull them out and let them join the party? Maybe it'll be a good thing. There's a reason why most girls typically gel down their natural baby hairs and slick them all the way back, sometimes cover them with nets before putting their frontals on. And I learned that after going through this process, but I guess I thought it would be okay. But because I still wasn't satisfied, I was like, let me go in with my tweezers and tweeze some more and tweeze some more, because my natural hairline, it kind of goes back. I don't have a widow's peak, but the shape of my hairline is not round, and it's kind of like one of those squares where I have like indentations on the side. And I just felt like this frontal is not looking real, so maybe I just need a pluck until this frontal has indentations. And that was just such a mistake, because all I ended up doing was plucking away until I practically balded certain areas to the point to where they could no longer look natural. So at this point, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to stress about it. I got my got-to-be glue. I'm just going to go ahead and gel this thing down. Rather than trying to just only stitch it down, I don't think that's going to work out for me. I'm going to gel this down, at least in this top area. Maybe that'll make it look more natural. So that's what I did. I kept going like, hey, this is going to be it. I started to trim baby hairs in it. And then I went in and I like laid the baby hairs down and everything. And I thought maybe I'll feel better about this later on. Maybe it's going to just get better as I go, but it just never really got better. I started going through and parting it, thinking, wow, okay, this is laid pretty good, but this lace does not match my skin complexion. And because I was going back and forth to the bathroom and the white lighting, when I was doing it, I just didn't really notice until now. So that's when I decided to go wash all of the gel off, because I need to add some makeup to this. Now, this was such a huge mistake, because typically if I know I need to add makeup to my frontal, that's the first thing that I do before I stitch anything down. And I don't typically use concealer. I use like a foundation or like a powder foundation and hairspray. You're supposed to do that whole process to the whole frontal so everything's even. But, I was just like, you know what? I don't want to take this frontal off. I think I can gimmick it, just put some concealer towards the front and then, maybe just not do my parts back too far. Well, as you can see, the concealer was just a big old mess because when I'm applying this concealer, it's not going on evenly. I'm thinking, okay, I can spread it around with this brush and some powder and I can just kind of like spread it out. Yeah, I know I'm getting makeup on the hair, but I can easily clean that up with some water later on. And like I said, a mascara brush, so it'll be all good. And so I decided this is going to be my part. Let me go put some concealer on this. It'll be fine. I'm just like, at this point, so irritated thinking I could rush the process. After laying my baby hairs down again, I decided to send my sister a video. She also does hair. And I was so frustrated at this point. This is the first time I felt like throwing the video in the trash can and just giving up. But I was like, let me check with another hairstylist first. And I showed her and she was like, it's not horrible, but you can do better. So I think you should try again. And so this was like in the middle of the night, like 5 o'clock in the morning a few days ago. And I was stressed out. And I was like, okay, you're right. I should give it another try. Don't give up. So I proceeded to wash as much of the makeup out of this frontal as I possibly could, all of the gel out. I did not want to take the whole thing down, but I just removed the stitches on the side that were anchoring it down, and I decided, let's try this again. And this time, I'm just going to commit to gelling down the whole front piece. This is probably what I should have done in the first place. Also, I went in with the Got2b gel, and this time I brushed all of my baby hairs back because I realized trying to make my baby hairs be a part of the mixture and the party up front, it wasn't a good idea. But mind you, I've already cut my lace, and my lace is already cut back kind of too far, and I've already plucked the hell out of it. So it's also kind of looking like balding in random areas, and I'm just like not happy with it. So then I'm like, well, let me just pull it as far forward as I can. Maybe once I lay it down and everything's dried, I can get it to work out. And I'm also thinking I'm only going to wear a part in one section. I'm not about to try to be wearing this all up and down, so it doesn't need to be perfect at this point. It just needs to be done. But as you guys know, I was so irritated, I started really taking shortcuts. Like, I wasn't letting the Got2b dry and become tacky like I should have, which was making everything take longer. I just wasn't really being as careful as I would be with a client. I figured with myself, I'll figure it out as I go. So this is when I get the bright idea that maybe I should go cut the lace some more. Maybe I should cut the lace to be more square shaped to match my natural hairline and my natural head shape. Then maybe it'll look more real. I wanted to cry at this point because as I was cutting, I just knew that I had made a big mistake. I feel like George Washington with a black wig on. This looks horrible, y'all. But I've already committed to the process and I'm like, I'm about to make this as good as I can, okay? Now, some of y'all who are experts at doing frontals are probably looking at this and wanting to cry yourself, thinking, what the hell is she doing? But this is a very transparent moment for me, y'all. And at this point, I was like, I have no way out of this. I have to make this work. So the little white areas that were obviously dried out from the Got2b glue, I just went in with a wet towel, tried to clean those up. I was like, I'm finna slick these baby hairs. It's gonna be proper. As far as adhering, it was adhering pretty good, Went in, made my part. This time I was more careful and I found a foundation. So it's like not as thick as the concealer. I found a foundation that somewhat matched my scalp tone. And I went in and I very carefully applied that foundation. This I felt more confident about than the concealer. I knew that no matter what happened with this frontal, I had to do this because that lace just did not match my skin complexion. And it was too late for me to go take the whole thing off and figure it out. I also decided this time, instead of gelling my baby hairs down with Got2b, I'm going to gel them down with Eco Styler. That way I can make all the mistakes I want and I'm not going to be dealing with a dried up mess. And so I just messed with this baby hair, y'all. I just messed with it and messed with it some more. I ended up going in the bathroom and cutting more of the lace off. I just kept trying my very, very best. And at this point, I was like, this is like the best that I'm going to be able to do. I don't really see how I'm going to make it much better than this. So we just going to rock with this. And then I proceeded to installing the rest of the bundles, which I filmed, but figured it's not necessary since it was kind of a fail. And this is how it looked in the end. I mean, I think that the style turned out perfect. The hair is beautiful, like beautiful and flowing. I didn't even use all 3 bundles. I was just stressed out about the fact that I knew my frontal didn't look that good, and I still had to do this video. But I decided I'll show you guys the final result anyways, show you guys how pretty the hair is from Wiggins Hair. You guys can check them out. Their prices are pretty good. I'm definitely going to go practice doing frontals on myself, and I'm going to do a follow-up video, and I'm going to slay. But until then, I thank you for joining me in this process. I hope you learned something from my mistakes. I hope you don't make the same mistakes yourself. Please leave any tips and suggestions that you have below. I've done a ton of research by now, so I kind of feel like I know everything I did wrong. But just in case, thank you. And these last little clips are just to show you that lighting is everything. As you guys can see, this whole video was shot in super bright white lights, but when you look at the frontal in natural light settings or more yellow light settings, it doesn't look nearly as bad. So keep that in mind next time you guys look at people's frontal videos and pictures and you're determining whether or not they were perfect, because that is yet another misconception. Thank you so much for joining me. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video.